on Legal. We welcome you to our panel discussion, Embracing AI, an Imperative for Legal Professions. Now, today I have with me Irwin, Steve, and Leslie joining from different part of the world. And today we'll be discussing about why AI is such an important aspect in our day-to-day life. And when it comes to in-house counsel's role, what are the importance of AI and what challenges does it bring in when it comes to adoption of AI at different verticals in any particular organization? So today I have a great panel with me where we will discuss different aspects about the AI. So let me start the discussion by introducing my esteemed panel first. Uh, so Irwin is currently General Counsel at TRED. He has almost 25 years of experience. He started his career as a litigator. He was a litigator for a while in the early days and then switched the roles and moved to corporate advisory roles. He also founded a virtual legal incubator for VCs and tech companies. It's called as 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗿, where he advises startups as well as VCs on different matters related to law, which could be commercial contracts, the M&A, advisory, IP, and he also advises on multi-jurisdictional topics as well. Interestingly, he has been practicing historical period dance for almost 20 years, and he has also been an associate director for the dance shows. And an interesting trivia about Irwin, which I could find just a while ago, was that during a plane flight from US to Tokyo, his daughter caught him on TV, which was the historical period dance being featured on a Universal TV. And that was a surprising moment for Irwin, an interesting fact about him as well. Thank you so much, Irwin, for giving your time and agreeing to share valuable insights about AI and your perspective with us and everybody around the globe who are watching us and following us. Thank you so much. We really are delighted to have you here.
You're welcome, Priyank. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Next panelist I have is 𝗘𝗺𝗯𝗏. He's Chief Legal Officer at Odego, currently handling corporate legal work, M&A, partnerships, compliance, risk, and everything under the legal head is what comes to Steven's door. And he has been running multiple communities as well. One of the community which he founded was Tech GC, which is an invite-only community for GCs and chief legal officers. He has also been part of, currently a co-chair of Bay Area Asian and American General Council list, where there are 230 plus members just based out of Bay Area who are from Asian American background. So, and one of the interesting fact about Stephen is that had it not been law, he would have been a great pianist. He loves music and he could be a musician. Sometimes the decision which he regrets, sometimes he loves doing that. But the fact of the matter is currently he's a lawyer, and I think at the back end, in the background, we can see his instruments as well. Thank you so much, Stephen, for again sharing your time and lovely insights with us, and looking forward to have a great discussion with you on the panel today. I think Stephen's internet just played its trick. Awesome. So the next panelist which we have is Leslie Pierce-Connor. She's General Counsel at 𝗘𝗺𝗴𝗹, and one of the interesting thing about her is that she has been instrumental in creating legal teams from ground up at multiple startups in her past. And she leads commercial transactions, compliance, and general corporate law functions at 𝗘𝗺𝗴𝗹. 𝗘𝗺𝗴𝗃 is an edtech company in the e-commerce space and one of the leader in the industry. In fact, one interesting fact about Leslie is she loves going outdoors, and she also had a dog. I would not name the dog because of the recent demise. And thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing the panel with us. Happy to have you here.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So my first question is actually to Steve. So Stephen, you have been playing a general counsel role at multiple organizations in the past, right from public companies to the private startups and the early stage companies as well. So when it comes to in-house legal counsel's role, how easy or difficult is it for an in-house legal counsel to be in the private company versus a public company? What freedom do you get? What restrictions do you have? If you can share something about that, that would be great to start with.
Sure. So this is actually my first GC role, but I've been in-house at a number of organizations, including public companies. I mean, I think sort of what you would expect, right? At a private company, you have a little bit more, a little bit less kind of the public eye on you. You're not, I guess, subject to some of the same requirements that public companies are. And so there's a little bit more freedom in sort of how you, I guess, carry yourself. But I think regardless of the company status, whether you're a private company, whether you're a public company, you're subject to most of the same laws and a lot of the same regulations. And so I don't actually think there's a huge difference in how I would advise my business clients at a private company versus a public company. Again, there are some differences. Your board meetings are run a little bit differently. There's securities regulations that may not apply to you as a private company, but even with all of that, I think a lot of private companies have the aspiration of becoming public someday. And so from that perspective, you want to build the similar habits and practices that you would in a public company. So there are some differences, but I would say it's probably not as much as people might think from the outside.
Interesting. You touched upon a very interesting aspect while sharing your journeys, that the private companies also have an aspiration to go public. And during this journey, I think the role of legal counsels become paramount. So Irvin, you have been advising startups right from early stage to even the VCs as well. What advices or checklists or certain mechanisms or systems you put in place which helps these private companies go public in a systematical fashion without causing any red flags in the journey? Would love to know from your experiences of working and advising these private companies throughout your journey.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of startups are not necessarily looking to go public or will ultimately go public, right? So I think from my perspective, a lot of the Incugo clients, they get acquired. They get acquired either by a PE firm or another company. And so I'm not really sure if there's a whole lot of discussion of setting up a company to go public, from an AI perspective. I think that at the end of the day, you're still trying to do the same things. I'm sort of echoing what Stephen says here with respect to public versus private companies. It's really a matter of just making sure that you've got legal compliance, data privacy, security, right? Product, all the teams have to work together well. They have to understand what are the necessary guardrails. And of course, as general counsel of Thread, I work with not only the CEO and the COO, but the entire heads of all these different teams to ensure that we have the correct policies in place.
Interesting. Good to know. So, Leslie, you have been helping startups in setting up the legal functions right from ground up, right? So you have had different people, different companies, different philosophies. Sometimes people like to take shortcuts when it comes to legal. Sometimes everybody just goes by the book. Now, in your experience, with the advent of AI and the way AI products are evolving at a rapid pace, do you think the initial legwork which a typical virtual general counsel or even any legal personnel would be advising any startup founders, can that initial bit be outsourced or be relied upon when it comes to AI as a tool? or as a companion for initial legal advisories?
So I think AI is not going to replace anybody who's giving initial advice, but I think it is an important companion. And I think the more important thing to understand is you're not going to be able to give reasonable and practical advice if you do not consider AI moving forward in tech. AI is a reality in tech from now into the future. And as you're considering the initial setup of policies and of procedures, you have to consider AI as a factor. You have to consider implementing appropriate guardrails around AI, around ethical use of AI, around AI compliance in terms of what kind of data can be fed into AI and appropriate use of AI from the start. And there's no one size fits all solution. All companies are different. The data being processed by companies is different. But I think from the very beginning, determining how you're going to use AI, how much you're going to rely on AI, and how you're going to ethically use AI in order to augment your procedures is something you should really give a lot of thought to and seek advice on from like a very early stage, because it is a reality in the tech space. You can't avoid it at this point. I think a lot of us tried to put our heads in the sand early on, but now it's time to just accept it and find the safest way to use it.
All right. So in your role or in your day-to-day life, do you use AI more versus talking to your associates? Has that changed?
Over time, I definitely use AI more than I did even 6 months ago. As tools have gotten better and as we've become more comfortable determining how AI can be used in a way that is safe, and in a way where you can train the model or use models that don't train on your data or onboard tools that you can use safely, I've definitely become more reliant on AI to give me something to react to find red flags and things. We have AI tools that we rely on to really help give me the time to focus on things that need my training and my brain and help cut out more administrative tasks, use more workflows, operationalize more things. So that's really where you're going to see the greatest benefits of AI, I think, is using AI to accelerate things that don't necessarily require your expertise to give you time to focus on things that do require your expertise.
Impressive. So basically use AI for improving your efficiency and
Yes.
focus on things which matter the most, and all the million tasks which are not something which will require your time and like they are not time sensitive. I think that can be outsourced to AI, which can just take care of it, do all those groundwork while you keep on focusing on the strategy and the bigger tasks.
Yes,
That's
with the caveat, and I always like to give this caveat with AI use. I call it the intern test. I think a lot of people refer to it as the intern test. AI does not replace an associate. AI does not replace a person. You should treat it as an intern, a really eager intern who maybe isn't an expert in the field. Review it the way you would review what an intern does. Look at it, make sure that everything is correct, but it gives you something to react to. It gives you something to review. It should cut down on the time, but it's not perfect. It's not foolproof. So you still need to understand that mistakes might be made. Take a careful look at it. Don't just assume everything is correct. But it definitely does cut down on a lot of unnecessary time for things that don't necessarily require a lot of expertise.
Got it. Understood. So, I mean, in the legal profession we are in, when it comes to, let's say, we talking to the leadership, we talking to any clients as well, or we talking to anybody in general, a certain notion is already created in the society which says that lawyers charge by the hours, and talking to lawyers is pretty frustrating. They go and start redlining everything, and they charge you for even talking to you. Now, with the use of AI, even this question is for you. With the use of AI, can we say that lawyers will become more, uh, I mean, lawyers will be adopting AI more, and they will be able to provide more value in the less time, thereby passing on the cost advantage as well to their clients or the people who they are consulting. Can we say like that? What's your take on it?
Yeah, great question. I think that what it does is that it frees up lawyers to do the more strategic work at the higher levels. So we are at 𝗘𝗺𝗃𝗃 experimenting with different AI tools, and we have several different ones currently. They're all behind paywalls, so we've carefully vetted the policies, make sure that we're not providing any kind of client confidential information to the AI engines unless we're getting consent. We're very transparent about that process. The reality is that even now, I can use AI for basic legal research. We use Lexis plus AI, for example,
okay.
at 𝗘𝗺𝗃𝗃. And what it's great for are things like being able to quickly identify laws, particularly in jurisdictions where I'm not a member of the bar, right? I'm a member of the California bar, but we have contracts sometimes that we're reviewing what a choice of law says. It's New York law, Delaware law, or some other state. And so if there's an issue that comes up in a contract, and I need to quickly understand, well, how does that law, what are the laws that apply for that particular state? I think those are, very great use cases where you can use something like Lexis or another AI tool that's specific to legal research to do those things. But I will also say that it's not perfect.
Okay.
It hallucinates. And so you still need a human lawyer to check the work, and you have to do your due diligence, right? I remember early on when ChatGPT was first rolled out, and I was like, this is great. Let me see what it can do. And I needed to prepare a response to the USPTO on a trademark issue in response to my office action.
Okay.
And I told Chat what I needed, just the same way I would tell, for example, a junior associate at a law. Prepare me a memo. I want to make these arguments, cite me the correct law, right, at the federal level or before the TMEP. And so I say all these things to it, and it comes up almost instantly with this beautifully written memo, no grammatical errors, no spelling mistakes, perfect English with citations and everything. And I looked at it and I read it. I said, wow, if this is really true, this is amazing. This will change the world. This will transform the way we practice law as lawyers. Then I started fact checking it and checking the citation. And I realized two things. One is some of the cases that it was citing was just completely made up. Like no such case actually even exists. So that's the first form of hallucination that AI engines can do. The second form of hallucination is probably the more pernicious one, where it is citing to an actual case. But the problem is that case is not on point for the proposition that it's supposedly citing to. So in other words, it's not taking the court's actual holding and using that as support. Or in some other instances, in this particular case, it was citing to me admiralty cases, real admiralty or maritime law cases for a trademark issue. So there's different varying levels of hallucinations. And I think it's really, really important for us as lawyers, as we use AI tools, to understand and recognize that AI does hallucinate, and two, that there are different types of hallucinations. So it's not good enough to say, okay, I Googled it and there is a case, right, that's citing it, or that it's citing to the correct statute. You have to actually see whether it's applying the law correctly, it's interpreting the law correctly, and then applying it to support the proposition you're actually making, right? I mean, and that's frankly what I'm saying right now is what we learn in law school. That's what we do as lawyers. That's the legal analysis part of the process. And unfortunately, the tools available are not there yet.
Yes, absolutely. So I also thanks for sharing even this particular instance of using chat for drafting USPTO trademark response. I went a step ahead. I used it for drafting a patent office action response, and the rejections were about subject matter eligibility. It was an abstract idea, and AI came up with its own invention while drafting the response. The inventors were not even aware about it when I read the entire script, and I was like, oh man, this is even beyond human capability to think. But in order to defend that particular objection, AI came up with different arguments, hypothetical arguments, just to defend it and back it up. So I realized, after of course periodically using AI for a longer time, I realized that AI does not know how to say no. You ask anything, AI will find some random solution, connect certain dots, and give it to you.
That's
It
exactly
will
right.
not say no.
It has its own biases, and it also will take your how you query is so important. And one of the things we do,
Yes.
right, I'm part of the AI committee of right, is we make sure that we educate our employees on exactly how do you query AI, right? Because
Right.
like you said, the way in which you query, in some ways, AI tries to be too helpful, too nice,
True.
too empathetic. They assume that whatever your question is correct in of itself. It doesn't push back and say, well, your question is just wrong. Right. So example I like to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
is there was a study done at Stanford Reg Lab testing different AI tools for legal research. And one of the things they tested was if you put in a query that says, like in this Supreme Court decision where Justice Ginsburg dissents, explain something, right? And the premise of the question is wrong because in that particular case, Justice Ginsburg didn't even dissent. But what it will do is it will build an argument, assuming that she did dissent, and come out with recommendations that are on the opposite side of what the actual opinion said. So that's a real danger in using AI, where you need to be very careful about keeping your questions both precise with the relevant detail, but also making sure that you're not what we as a formal literate, what we call leading questions. You don't want to lead the AI just like you wouldn't lead a witness on a stand, right? So that's what I would say is really alarming, that these tools are available, they're powerful, but a lot of people don't know how to use them properly, right? I mean, there was the famous court case about the lawyer somewhere in New England that got reprimanded or sanctioned for submitting a brief, right? Chat
Yes. Directly out of ChatGPT.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yes. Absolutely. It had mentions of case law which were non-existent.
I promise I wasn't that New England lawyer.
Great. So my question is to Stephen. So Stephen, we discussed about, Leslie mentioned about putting guardrails to AI. Do not assume whatever it is sharing, it's true. Irvin talking about it's very important to have a right prompt. So basically, he talks about providing training to the entire team in writing the right prompts before you expect certain responses from any AI tool, ChatGPT for that matter. So when it comes to you as an in-house counsel, and when your organization says, you know what, we want to deploy AI and give access to AI to every person in our team, so that we don't need more hands on the deck, we don't need more interns while this AI is working 24/7 for us. What sort of guardrails or checklist are you coming up, or do you think about this checklist when it comes to deployment of AI into the enterprise at different levels in the whole ecosystem?
It's actually a very timely question, because I had one of our engineering folks come to me, I think last week, with basically this question. They have like a kind of an AI focused tool that they want to deploy, and we're a startup, right? Like we have some policies in place, and we're growing to build others. But one of the things that I sort of planted the seed in, mainly the tech organization, because that's kind of the most AI advanced organization, is the the idea of needing some sort of set of principles. Some people call them governance rules surrounding AI and use and deployment of AI. So it covers everything from, if you want to purchase a subscription to an AI tool, or you're trying to develop your own in-house AI-enabled product, anything that kind of relates to AI. What I think is like really critical there is that it should not be just me as the general counsel or the legal team coming up with those rules, right? Because we are part of a company, an organization, and that organization has its own views on AI, its own views on risk tolerance, and other issues like that. And so while I think it's important for me as the general counsel to be involved in that discussion, I also don't want to be the one setting all the ground rules. And so what we're in the process of doing is setting up essentially a committee of representatives that I'm on the committee. It'll also have our head of product, our head of engineering, someone from our data team. And it's really up to us as a group to come up with the rules that we follow. And of course, having a legal background, I will have probably stronger opinions on certain issues of risk, but I also want to make sure that we're being, not necessarily the least risky options when it comes to deploying AI, because I think if you are on that side of things, you will just fall behind. So I'm helping to find the right balance of risk tolerance and risk mitigation. So we're in the active process of doing that right now.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that while we are playing around and incorporating AI at different at different levels in the organization for different functions, we are also exposing ourselves to AI in a very big way, and whatever interactions we are doing with AI also are not being kept confidential?
Yeah, so there's things I think Irvin might have mentioned this in passing in an earlier response, but or Leslie, like when you're using AI models, hopefully there's an option to opt out of your data being used for training for those models. And if you have a corporate subscription, that option's usually available. So there's certain ground rules that you can set. So as part of the list of principles that we're putting together, one of them is that, right? Make sure you select any options that opt out of training. You shouldn't be including any company confidential information or PII in any, if you're asking, an AI model questions, you make sure to strip out anything confidential, that sort of thing. So there are certain ground rules that we're putting together that try to mitigate, I think the risk that you're implying in your question, which is, kind of the downside of the potential of leakage of confidential information through, someone just thinking, oh, I'm going to dump all of these documents into the AI model and get some, solutions out of that.
So there are always those kind of people in the team, right, who would come and dump everything to AI and expect the response, just sit waiting that, okay, let the AI do the magic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like any other rule, right, that you have in a company. There's always going to be someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them or don't truly understand why those rules are in place. And so I don't know that you necessarily need to do anything unique. You just have, sets of rules for everyone to follow the same way you would for other types of, like anti-discrimination, anti-harassment. We'll have a bunch of different policies that say here are things that you shouldn't do, and here's how you behave at a company. And if people don't follow those rules, then there may be consequences like there would be for any other policy. But I do take your point that it can be a little bit harder to police. So I know that some companies really struggle with finding that balance. And sometimes the solution is you just get everyone a corporate account, and that way you can track it better and make sure that you're more likely to ensure compliance. There's also obviously a cost to that, right? If everyone has a corporate account, that's not cheap. But there's different ways that you can provide periodic trainings. You can do check-ins and remind people of some of those ground rules. So there's things you can do, but is it going to be 100% foolproof? Probably not. But nothing's foolproof, right? And all you can do is put in guardrails and try to help move people in the right direction.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. So Leslie, I have a question for you. Now, we already discussed that whatever AI is giving is not 100% correct. In fact, you voiced it out as well, that do not depend on AI, do a double check. Now, when it comes to an in-house counsel, and Stephen is adopting a route where he's forming a community or a committee where every stakeholder is giving their inputs and then collaboratively coming up with a policy, what, according to you, would be the best practice for setting up ethical boundaries when it comes to use of AI, or certain compliance guardrails which you would have adopted in your current role when it comes to use of AI across the different verticals in the organization? How do you look at these things?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for this. I do think it is going to be highly dependent on what vertical your company is in, the stage of your company. A true startup is going to have a very different risk tolerance from a pre-IPO company, from a public company, or a growth stage post-Series C company. And it's going to vary a lot too, based off of, are you B2B, B2C? What kind of data are you processing? Where are the data subjects located? So I think all of that is going to play a large factor. I think it does take input from several stakeholders internally. For us, we took input from several members of the executive team. We had a conversation where the main stakeholders were me as the GC and the chief technology officer to really take input and synthesize that into a set of principles. And then we did put together a generative AI policy that broke out general rules for the company at large, that echoed a lot of what Stephen said. Everything needed to be, locked down behind a paywall. There needed to be, no training of data. We send everything through a vendor review before anybody can use an AI tool. But then we had an additional layer of protections for our product and engineering teams. So anything that we wanted to be able to protect under trade secret, copyright, anything to that effect, there were additional guardrails that we needed to implement. So we wanted to make sure that if you were using something like Copilot or Cursor, you're using that responsibly. So if we were going to seek to protect something as uniquely 𝗘𝗺𝗴, it wasn't something that we were overly reliant on an AI code editor for. So we had a set there, and then we're extremely risk averse when it comes to customer data. We do not allow any customer data to be fed into any sort of AI tool. That is a very unpopular opinion, but it was a really firm stance we took. We just feel very strongly about that because we operate extensively in Europe, and the risk was not something that we felt we could assume. But at a smaller true startup, I could see where it might be something where they felt it was worth it to seek consent from their customers to do something more to that effect, to list these tools as sub-processors. So I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all tool or a one-size-fits-all approach here. But I would say you really need to look at what is the practical risk of what you're doing for every single subset of this. If I do this, what is the worst thing that could happen? And then what is the most likely thing that could happen? Break it into 3 buckets, if nothing happens, a more likely thing, and then the absolute worst thing. And then really run that through what is our corporate risk tolerance and synthesize that into a set of core principles. And as we've grown, we have become more risk averse than we were when we were in startup phase. And you can see that reflected in our policies. But if we were, and we're B2B as opposed to B2C, and that impacts a lot of what we're doing as well. So I would say, honestly, you need to have a lawyer help you come up with these principles. I don't think it should be solely the council coming up with these principles, but I definitely think you should have counsel helping you with this. So if somebody is listening to this who maybe does not have in-house counsel, I would highly recommend them to seek the assistance of outside counsel when they are coming up with these principles to implement internally.
Very interesting. You gave a very good insight about the framework with less risky, moderate risk versus high risk, depending upon the business, and categorizing different functions based on the risk tolerance. Now, so when you were explaining, I could see that you have actually put in a lot of work at different level in the organization to ensure that AI is being used judiciously. So do you think after AI, lawyers have got more work on their desks versus what the time they were enjoying before?
I would say it's front-loaded work. I think we do a lot of work to implement the AI. And then once the AI is implemented, I think it helps to accelerate workflows moving forward. I do think if you're using AI intelligently and responsibly, then it is worthwhile work for implementation. But I do think you need to take the time to set up these guardrails and set up these guidelines before you start scaling your AI work internally, because you really want to make sure that it's used ethically and responsibly before opening the floodgates.
All right, understood. So, Erwin, I have a question to you. So, while sharing her answer, Leslie mentioned about setting up guardrails for engineers differently, because they would be playing around with copilots and cursor and other code development tool where AI is being used to even write the codes and brainstorm on the programming side and solving technical challenges. Now, since you have been a patent litigator in the past and you have a fair understanding of how the patent world operates, when it comes to patents, what and how important is it for an AI tech startup right now to consider for patenting their invention versus disclosing it out in the world, or just coming up with different libraries and put it out on GitHub? Would you advise them to go for IP protection, patent protection, or would you ask them to wait and watch and just scale the product and do not worry about IP? What would be your stance?
That's a very, very fact-specific question. I think what is patentable and what is not is something that you would talk to a patent attorney about, right? And so it's unclear as to how you could kind of come up with like a one-size-fits-all for something like that.
Okay, so and what about use of co-pilots for developing the product? So most of the time, these product engineers are using these co-pilots and doing the brainstorming while also sharing the ideas there with the co-pilot and coming up with ideas with the help of co-pilot. And then when it goes for patent process or IP process, in the end, that stuff is already discussed out there. What do you think we can, like, how do you design a guardrail around this system?
Well, we have a corporate account with Copilot, and as part of our AI internal policy, employees have the right to and are actually encouraged to use Copilot for certain specific use cases, right? And so it's not okay, just do whatever you want with it, but because it's the corporate version of it, we are less concerned about the input, right, in terms of information that is confidential to the company. Now, again, like Leslie, we are extremely careful about customer data, so we will not be encouraging use of Copilot for that purpose.
All right. Understood.
And on the patent side, again, I think I haven't seen, we don't use Copilot for that purpose. right? In terms of trying to determine whether something's patentable or not, or for anything related to patents. I will also say that in general, whether it's at Thread or for other 𝗟𝗃𝗃𝗃 clients, we work primarily in the SaaS space, where a lot of the most important intellectual property are protected through trade secrets, right?
Okay.
Platform use is protected through password, protection, and customers have to pay for access to a SaaS subscription. It's not like any of this information is publicly available, and obviously, clients have customer agreements, right, where there's robust confidentiality clauses in the contracts that prohibit their use of using the software for anything other than the purpose for which it was intended. So in other words, patents don't really come up as much in this context.
Okay, got it. So Stephen, based on your experience and the time which you have spent playing around with AI, if I have to ask you, what are the top 3 standout benefits for a lawyer after the invention of AI specific use cases for lawyers specifically? If I have to ask you, what would be those top 3 benefits which stand out to you?
See if I can come up with 3. I think one very obvious benefit, as both Leslie and Irvin have mentioned, is really being able to utilize AI for a lot of what I'll call like lower level tasks. So, just becoming more efficient, not having to spend as much time checking, certain things, or having to, spend the time putting together a chart or a spreadsheet with information that you already have. I think a lot of those tasks, especially for in-house counsel, right? That's stuff that you wouldn't pay a law firm to do necessarily, but sometimes, as in-house counsel, you have to spend some time doing. And so I think, as everyone has mentioned, if you're able to save time on those tasks, it frees you up more time in your day to think strategically about the business, about your team, that sort of thing. So I think the time efficiency is a really big one. Another benefit, I think, is I actually do think there are interesting and beneficial use cases for things like contract drafting. Those tools that are out there, there's a lot of them. They're not all perfect. None of them are perfect. They will continue to consolidate, I think, in the legal tech industry. But I think that AI is getting to the point where it can do a pretty good job drafting and redlining contracts. I, like Irvin, do a little bit of consulting on the side, and one of my clients who runs a very small company came to me and said, "Hey, I'm trying to do this sort of contract, and I just asked AI to draft it for me, and here's what it is. What do you think?" It was actually not bad, right? It wasn't perfect. I did have to redline it, but it was it did provide a base to work from that I then had to edit some of the provisions and add in some language that wasn't there. But I think those sort of tools, again, it's sort of time saving, but it also I think is just a way to enable the legal team to be more productive and to be able to move things faster, which ultimately, especially on the commercial contracting side, if you're able to speed up those deal cycles, you are directly benefiting the business by allowing them to, get to the revenue faster. And then I guess I have to come up with a 3rd thing, right? I would say that another benefit of it is idea generation. So I actually use AI a lot as a brainstorming assistant. Sometimes, for example, if I have to respond to a demand letter, I'll ask them for some thoughts. And, again, as I think the theme of this discussion, AI is not perfect. I'll look at what they recommend, and sometimes I'll reject 90% of it, but sometimes they'll come up with arguments that I hadn't personally thought of. And again, I may need to tweak it, but it is really useful for that. So I actually do use AI a lot when I need sort of like a brainstorming partner, or if I'm learning about a new subject matter and I read a quick tutorial. Again, you need to make sure that it's accurate, but there is a lot of information in these databases that and AI is able to distill that information a lot of times in a very clear way. And so I cannot tell you the number of times I've heard a phrase or something that I didn't know anything about, and I think it's more effective than Google search in a lot of ways for a lot of these types of things. So I think those are probably three big benefits that I see from AI for legal teams.
Amazing. So one is time saving, another is giving you a base when it comes to drafting of contracts or anything, and the third is using it as a brainstorming assistant. That's
Yep.
a great one. Leslie already mentioned that AI is an intern for her, but I have a different question for Leslie. So Leslie, when the AI came in, like almost a year back or so, everybody started adopting it, and then there were a lot of people saying that AI cannot take the jobs away, or AI can take the jobs away, and everybody started defending it. But now, since AI is part of everybody's work, like, and day in day out, we're talking to AI, improving it, making sure that it helps us out. What do you think will happen in next 3 years? How would in-house counsels be evolved after 3 years from now with the usage of AI? Or what's your take on it? 3 years from today.
Yeah, so I think it's funny when we talk about AI, because AI can mean a lot of things. I think generative AI is usually what you mean, but I mean, we've been using AI tagging in the legal industry for a long time in contract lifecycle management tools. And with the advent of more AI tools, I've seen that get a lot better, which again, I don't think it's going to replace heads on legal teams, but I think it is a huge augment to contracts managers, and it makes their jobs a lot easier and it makes them a lot more effective. But I'm really interested to see how it changes the law school experience and the associate experience, because looking back on that time a million years ago, so much of what we did was legal research. It was utilizing tools like Lexis and Westlaw and Bloomberg, and it was really learning how to use those tools intelligently. And I think now utilizing generative AI, there's less of that. And I think it's going to make these junior associates so much more effective. And they're going to be able to do less training in order to be really, really impactful with research. And I think we're going to be able to just move at a much faster pace when it comes to that. And then with in-house counsel, I think we're going to be able to draft faster. We're going to be able to pull policies together faster. I cannot tell you how much time I have spent over the years asking friends, hey, do you have a template for this? Hey, do you have a sample of this that I can react to, that I can start from? And now you can ask ChatGPT or something to that effect, hey, show me a standard operating procedure for X. Take it, make it your own, but it saves hours of time every single week. So I think you're going to see both law firm and in-house lawyers become a lot more effective using it intelligently and responsibly. I think the biggest risk to in-house counsel is using it irresponsibly. So I think it's really going to be over the next 3 years, we're going to find what that line is. We're going to find how to use it in a way where you're not at a high risk of things like hallucinations, where you're not at a high risk of abusing things or at a high risk of data breach, but really using it in a way where it's going to accelerate your work streams and free up your time to spend more time on strategy and accelerate more administrative tasks. And then hopefully you can use your budget more effectively. I think a lot of us are heavily relying on our outside counsel budgets, and hopefully we can start to see those decrease over time as those billables increase.
Yes, I mean, you touched upon a great point about the billables and the budgets for the legal. I think when it comes for in-house counsels, that's always there on the cards, that we can't spend this much on the legal fees. Can we reduce this much? And I think the AI is going to help a lot in that area. And yes, AI, I mean, the law firms also have really started using it. I mean, we have started adopting it. One of the use cases which we figured out in our day-to-day service offerings was that whenever the inventor used to submit an idea to us, we used to take almost 4 to 5 days in coming back to them with a detailed search report by doing some patent searches. Now we've developed a product which can do a patent search in 2 minutes and provide us code as well, provide similarities, do citation. All of these things were being done manually. And now we have a tool which can do this with great confidence. Of course, it can improve the performance, but now the inventors do not have to wait for a week to get the results. They can see the results themselves in their hands while they're playing around with the tool. So we came up with own tool ourselves by playing around with AI. And I think a lot more such use cases will emerge in the legal tech space with the advent of AI. And I'm sure it's going to help us at different verticals in the industry as well. So Irwin, since Stephen and Leslie both mentioned about the fact that AI is helping reduce time, reduce cost, giving you a lot more efficiency, do you think that it can be a possibility in the future where only one person legal teams are operating, or one person law firms are there, only single person, while the rest of the team is being deployed by AI? All the work is being done using generative AI or agentic frameworks, and the one person reviews and ships the work. Do you think that can also be a possibility in the future? Because content side, the marketing and the sales guys have already started coming up with one person company. But in the legal space, usually it's a team sport. It has been a team game when it comes to litigation, when it comes to corporate advisory, strategy. How do you think AI is going to play a role here? Will legal remain a team thing, or it's going to become one person with with an AI army? How do you think the future looks like?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I think predicting the future is a dangerous. I will say this though, right, which is at the moment, right, in the present day, AI is really just a tool that enhances, does not replace, right? The analogy I like to use again is like driving a Tesla with FSD, full self-driving features, right? It's a situation where yes, it can drive me door to door without intervention, but I still need to supervise it. And so we're at the stage right now, I think, with AI tools where the human alone is inferior. The AI alone is inferior. But if you combine the human plus the AI together, you're going to get the most superior product or service. So the other aspect to this that I should mention that hasn't been touched upon is that the AI legal landscape is so broad and it's so complex and touches upon all sorts of laws and affects so many different aspects of our lives, right? I mean, we're at a point right now where we have, I believe, 42 out of 50 states that have enacted some kind of AI legislation. I know in California alone, there's 16 different types of AI laws that governs everything from using AI to create intimate images to healthcare communications. We're in the health tech space, so that's always on my radar. To government accountability, training data, AI calling, deepfakes, deceptive media. I mean, the list just goes on. And the fact is, these laws have different effective dates, different scopes and requirements, different penalties, and so you still need humans to navigate all of that, to understand all of that. And whether or not one individual human can do that alone, I think depends in large part on, well, what's the size of your company, right? How many legal issues are there, right? Smaller companies could maybe get away with just one lawyer plus AI in the future. I think larger companies are if you're talking about big Fortune 50 companies, enterprise organizations, you're still going to need a team of lawyers, I think the other aspect too, right, is that because AI touches upon so many of these different laws that cover different subject areas, you would still probably need a subject matter expert that's a human that is ultimately responsible for handling that area with respect to what AI is saying. So maybe the AI tool can be one singular, but I do think that in the future we will still have human SMEs that will be responsible for different aspects of it. I will also say this as an aside, which is even now when I'm using AI and I'm dealing with, fact checking it, I use multiple AI tools. So I'm not just using one. So just as there's, your question is about one human lawyer, but with one AI, you may not get as good of an answer as having two or more. So I will feed the same prompt into multiple AIs and see what they come up with. I will fact check one AI's response against another AI's, using another AI to analyze and say, is this correct? So even when I do the due diligence, it's a tiered process where I use AI to get me an initial response. I use another AI to fact check it. And then there's the ultimate layer, which is the human layer. So I think we're already at that point where we can start using AIs in combination with each other synergistically to do that. And maybe I'm just an optimist here, but I think humans will always have a place here in this world.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, great points mentioned. That of course there has to be a human layer, no question about it, and I'm also for it. I don't want to get replaced by an AI. So the humans also need to adopt AI and be on top of it, so that they can do the fact checking. They can deploy multiple systems, as you are rightly using one AI for creating something, another AI to validating that, and then putting a third layer of human on top. I think that's a great way to use AI, leverage AI, and along with the fact checking, I think the bigger question also comes is different jurisdictions and how multiple jurisdictions have different policies and laws in place right now to handle data privacy, governance, handling of data, and at the global level as well. Nobody knows what will be the end point of the evolution of AI. So even the laws are evolving, the legal teams are evolving, and I think it's best to evolve along with AI and try to put it certain guardrails, as Stephen and Leslie mentioned. I think then that will be a better place to be. So for all the lawyers who are watching and learning from our discussion, I think the few points stand out, which is consider AI as your smart intern. Do not depend 100% on it. Do a fact checking, because AI can of course hallucinate. Like Irwin adopted, use 2-agent system or 3-agent system and put a human layer on top of it, so that you're 100% sure that you're not sending something which is just imaginary stuff from the AI. As Leslie and Stephen are putting guardrails in their organizations to ensure that at each level, at each designation, AI has been used with certain policies that really would shape a great adoption and can be a good strategy, in fact. So, and yes, of course, in the future, we can see that the humans are leading the legal teams, while the AI agents are doing a lot of background research and drafting help as well, so that we don't need more billable hours and more spending when it comes to law firms. So thank you so much, all of you guys, for sharing this. So before we close today's discussion, if there are any passing remarks or anything which you would like to share with our audiences, Stephen, Leslie, or Irwin, the floor is all yours.
I would just say for all the founders out there, right, sit down with an AI lawyer. And by that, I don't mean an AI tool for lawyers, but a human lawyer with expertise on AI law. Go through all the different laws that are either in effect or coming into effect. And some of these are coming into effect very soon. Some have just been in effect. Flag which ones are potentially applicable to your company, right? Set up an AI committee, right? Identify the requirements of each law and work with your whole team on this. It's a really, really important thing to do. And finally, just don't over rely on AI, right? Again, it's a tool. When used correctly, it can be very powerful, but always double check its work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I would just piggyback on that. For founders and technology teams out there, be really intentional about how AI intersects with the data privacy landscape. That is really where it can hurt you. So if you're doing any processing of personal information, be very intentional about the way you structure your AI use.
Excellent.
And I guess I would say message for more for the legal side, the legal teams, is to just have a really good handle on both your industry as well as your teams in terms of how they are interacting with AI. I think if you can build trust with your technology team, for example, or your data team, that you're there to work with them and not just to stop them from using these amazingly productive tools, I think that you'll be able to have a much more productive and beneficial approach to, toward AI and AI-assisted tools. So, so just make sure that you are on top of those conversations, that you are embedded in any sort of conversations that come up around AI, and that you're working with your teams versus kind of being like the person that's trying to stop them from using their tools. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for your insights. These are really valuable. You have been a great panel, and you did not shy away from sharing the nuggets of wisdom. I really appreciate you giving us time and sharing the knowledge with all of us. Thank you so much. I will be just stopping the live streaming. Would love to have 2 minutes chat with you, if that's okay from all of you.